Tom, it's so great to chat with you today, and I'm especially looking forward to doing this on a more regular occasion now that BYU will be coming out to Kansas every year as a member of the Big 12, which, big thanks to you for the role you played in helping BYU get into the Big 12.
Well, we're super excited at BYU to be one of the new members of the Big 12. And believe it or not, I've been an AD for 18 years now. I've been a lot of places around the country, but Kansas and Kansas State are two schools that I've never been to. So I'm super excited for new experiences, new friendships, and a chance to kind of open up on some opportunities in the Big 12 in these new venues.
Yeah, a lot of people are understandably excited about BYU to the Big 12. I put my name up there as kind of one of the most excited because now my family and friends will be coming out multiple times every year and can't wait to see everybody in Allen Fieldhouse and Booth Memorial Stadium, et cetera. So, well, speaking of your career as an athletic director, but also as an athlete with the 49ers, Super Bowl champ, and as a coach, are there 2 to 3 simple, practical, underappreciated lessons you've learned that you'd most like to pass along to others?
Yes, for sure. And I think there's a lot of lessons I've learned through the many years I've been involved in athletics. But if you're asking for 2 or 3, I think and these might not be the top 2 or 3, but they're ones that kind of came to my mind today, and maybe even knowing that I was going to talk to you. So I'm kind of personalizing these for Nate Mickle. The first one would be relationships count. I think that even more so now, you look at student athletes today at BYU, and we're at collegiate, college athletics. The relationships between the student athletes and themselves, the student athletes and the coaches, student athletes and sport administrators, ADs, the fans and the student athletes. These are all really important. They're important to the student athletes, and I think they're important to the people around them. So I just think that a lot of times I've noticed from the time I was in Little League all the way up until now, including professional football as a player and a coach, that the more successful experiences that I was around involved people that really counted on each other. And sometimes at BYU, I will see teams that we have that are very talented and maybe more so talented than teams before them or even teams after them that won at a better clip than they did. And winning isn't everything, but usually success is a manifestation of many things, one of which is relationships. And I just kind of took a few notes here that there's 5 stages of relationships that John Maxwell, who's kind of a leadership guru that I follow a lot and have kind of looked to him in a lot of areas. He talks about 5 stages of relationships. I'm not going to get into them, but the best relationship stage is what they call a significant relationship. And that's people who give beyond reason and they lift you up to a level that you could not achieve without them. And that's the part of this business of athletics that I love, is that from the time I was a young little leaguer to now in college athletics, I just love it when people give more than they take. And if you do, you can have exceptional experiences and your team can accomplish the many goals and aspirations that you're seeking for. So how did I say that's personal to you? I think that you and your teammates were great examples of players that gave more than they took. And because you did, the players on that team got more out of their experience than they ever could have without you. And I don't think if you take any team that I've been on, some of them have not been successful. I think it will be related directly to how strong the relationships were on those teams.
So I got a lot of thoughts. I'll try to be brief because I want to hear what else you have to say. When I finished playing, I had the thought, I was trying to figure out what to do in business. And I had the thought, well, Tom knows a lot of really successful business people. So maybe he could introduce me to some. So I set up a meeting in your office and you probably remember this. And I said, "Hey, Tom, are there, I'm trying to figure out my business career. Could you line me up with some people?" And so you graciously did. One of those you lined me up with was Jeff Rust. Jeff Rust ran Corporate Alliance, which was a networking company. And so me and a couple of my teammates, we went to meet with Jeff, and we were trying to learn from him. And he said, "Look, one of the things that I use when I'm networking is the learn, serve, grow model. I learn about people, I try to serve them, and then we grow together." I was like, "Oh, that's a really cool model." Another meeting that we set up was with Paul Gustafson, the consultant who had been helping Bronco Mendenhall. So we had lunch at a little Mexican restaurant in downtown Salt Lake with Paul. And I said, "Paul, what are you trying to do?" I'm trying to learn about Paul. Like, what are you trying to accomplish, Paul? What are you working on? He tells me, and said, "Well, is there anything we could do to help you?" And he says, "Well, yeah, I'm always looking for more clients. So if you want to, if you bring me some clients, we'll work on this together." Well, a year ago here now we're in 2022, a friend of mine calls and says, "Hey, we could really use some help with our mission and vision, and we're growing really fast and we want to help retain employees. Do you know anybody that could help?" And I said, "Yeah, I do." And so now I've been consulting with this company for the last year, me and Paul together, all because of you lining us up, and helping me develop those relationships. And then just another thought that came to mind, you talked about the 2006 team, or the team that I played on. I heard this phrase once, that sometimes it's better to be united under a lesser plan than to be divided under a greater plan. And that 2006 team was united, and we had an awesome run. Only lost 2 games by a combined total of like 4 points to Matt Ryan one game in a double overtime, and then was it Nick Foles, the kicker, last second Arizona. So really love those lessons that you share. But to get back to you, Tom, what other thoughts or lessons do you want to pass on?
Well, I think the second one would be know your role. And that might be strange, but I remember growing up. I grew up in a small town in Southern California, a suburb of LA, called La Crescenta, kind of off the beaten path. And it was a town where there were a lot of athletes. And so like a lot of people would assume that, I played in the NFL, that I was always the best athlete where I grew up on all the teams I played on. And that wasn't the case. From the time I was a little leaguer to the time I went to high school, I wasn't the best athlete on the team. We had great athletes around our place. And I was blessed to be around some great coaches that taught me, hey, you don't, and I was good. You don't have to be the best, but you have to be able to learn the role that we're going to give you, that the team gives you. You have to be able to accept that role, because if you're taught that you're going to play first base for us, but you don't like first base and you don't want to play first base, that's not going to be a good situation. If I want to play shortstop or I want to pitch, but they put me at first base, and I can learn to accept that role, knowing that, hey, if I do well playing first base, which is my assigned role, and I live up to that and I magnify that to the best I can, there's a chance that I can play pitcher or shortstop. And I learned that when I was a little kid. So every step of the way, when I was on any team, I always tried to figure out or ask to define the role that the coaches wanted me to play. And this is something that it's not just with athletic teams. That could be in a company, could be in your family, it could be in your church group. If you think about it, if there's more than one person involved, you play a role that's different than the other person. There's very, very, very infrequently do two people play the exact same role. And you learn, if you can learn the role you play, you can learn to be a complementary player, and you can learn to use your strengths and not have to be the top dog all the time, not have to push and try to be the hero, but you can invest in the team and create something special just with the gifts that you have. And it's one of my favorite things at BYU, because BYU doesn't get a lot of 5-star players. We get a lot of 3-star players that are like blue collar workers. And that goes for men and women, teams of all sports. But those kids have learned how to play a role on that team. And they give everything they have, and they let the other complementary roles come together with them to form success. So when I got to the 49ers, a lot of people say, well, what was it like, man, being a 49ers? Well, I was there and played for 7 years. I started about 7 games in 7 years. I was a backup player to a great Hall of Fame player named Ronnie Lott. And I learned my role on that team, which wasn't as a starter. And it was kind of a niche role. I was a nickelback, so I played on passing downs and I played on special teams. But it wasn't just what I did on the field. You also have a role off the field. So off the field, you're talking about culture. You're talking about relationships. You're talking about trying to bring the team together, make the team better. And I had a role on that team on the field and off the field that worked for the 49ers, because with Bill Walsh, that program that he built, that with Eddie DeBartolo as the owner, that came together. They drafted and added players that fit a role with the 49ers. And they didn't need 53 players that were stars. They needed 53 people that would come together as one. And that's why we won so much. So let me leave that with you, Nate.
I love that lesson. And I think football is the ultimate game of roles, right? Because you've got the 6'7", 300-pound guys, and you've got the 6'2", 180-pound receivers, and you've got the every once in a while a 5'8", 175 little slot receiver. And it's all about excelling at your role and creating something together that you can't do, no one person can do individually. And it's just cool to hear you talk about those players. Was it 3 Super Bowl rings that you earned in San Francisco? And I mean, just, talk about being surrounded by greatness. You don't have to be Ronnie Lott. You just have to be Tom Holmoe and help the team win. Well, I love these lessons, Tom. I could listen to you for hours. Just as we wrap up, is there any final piece of advice you'd like to pass on?
Well, I think the most important thing about leadership and life is that you just got to be in the game. You and I are athletes, and when I say we are athletes, we're not former athletes. I think that our mentality is that we grew up as athletes. So we understand teams, we understand performance, we understand failure. And I think that as people maybe in your class or that are listening to this or that get hold of this, they should understand that success is a journey, not a destination. I've had a ton of failures in my life, but if you can build your life with certain principles and certain goals and ideals that that you're going to aim towards, you got to build into it that there's going to be losses. You're going to lose some games. You're going to have some trials and some tribulation in your life. But if you have these principles where you can build strong relationships so that you always have people around you to help you and support you, if you can learn your role on the team, and so if I'm struggling, then I can adapt my role so that I can get back on track and then get back to the goals at hand. I think all of these are applicable, but you're not, just because you want to have a good relationship doesn't mean you are. You got to work really hard at being a great friend. You got to work super hard to build relationships. Some of the relationships here at BYU that I try to build, it's not reciprocal. So that's not my responsibility. My responsibility is to do the best I can. And when I do that, then I know that I'm happy, I'm at peace, and I have joy in my life.
Well, thanks so much, Tom. I love these lessons. I look forward to sharing them with my students, my children, try to keep applying them myself. So thanks so much for your time. And again, can't wait to see you out here in Lawrence, Kansas.
Let's go. Go Cougs.